Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Nerdified Podcast. I am The Cape is a Lie. Again, it's the ongoing joke that my channel has not been started, but it is here, and so maybe it'll start someday. We'll figure out what happens. But over here is my good pal.
Cranberry Landers. Howdy.
Howdy. Well, we have taken a hiatus for a little bit. I had my son. He was born here within the past year. It's been a fun ride and experience, getting to enjoy all of that. We're getting back into something that we both enjoy and love, and that is our love for comic books and pop culture and how it's evolved through the years and is evolving. And so we're going to hop in and talk about a little bit of Spider-Man here today. With that being said, Cranberry Landers, what was your favorite Spider-Man movie?
Out of the ones I've seen, it would not be a live action. It would be Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
You took my answer.
Oh yeah. The follow-up would be Andrew Garfield's series. That'd be a second.
Which one out of his series?
I liked both of them, but I think I liked the first one more, personally.
Okay. So we're not completely tied on that. I actually like the second one better. So I do find that interesting, but Andrew Garfield's movies were actually my favorite as well. I know a lot of people complained that he was a little too old. He didn't quite fit the role of Peter Parker. But I actually felt for a live action take and what he was doing after Tobey Maguire's series that it was the better version. And I was very disappointed to see it end where it ended. And so I'm really glad that they went back around with Tom Holland and kind of brought them all back together. There are rumors circulating right now that maybe they might do something with Tom Hardy's Venom and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. And I think that would be awesome. But I'm not buying into any of that until I see official confirmation of it. But how amazing would that be if you got to have Tom Hardy facing off against Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, Venom Spider-Man? I personally am a fan of Tom Hardy's Venom. I think that it's funny. It's a great take. If you're doing a live action Venom, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be pulled from there. Venom kind of has his own backstory in different areas. So a lot of different comic books, but we're here to talk about Spider-Man today. That being said, Into the Spider-Verse, definitely my favorite. The animation I felt was amazing. The storyline, so well done. You brought together a whole bunch of different elements and components, different characters, and each one didn't feel like they were overshadowed or overlooked. It was very well balanced. You had a number of different villains that were introduced. Prowler was kind of given a spotlight Into the Spider-Verse. If you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, but these are spoilers and you should have seen it already. Prowler winds up being Miles Morales' uncle. Miles Morales is the new Spider-Man from the Ultimate Universe, and he's the one starring in Into the Spider-Verse. And you wind up coming to a head and seeing some dramatic action unfold as Miles Morales is kind of growing into being the Spider-Man after witnessing the death of Peter Parker. And it's an amazing movie. You should see it if you haven't.
I just realized that...
As far as... What's that?
I just realized that Miles Morales and Peter Parker both saw their uncles die with a gunshot. It's just by criminals. That just occurred to me.
That's a narrative, and it's actually explained in the Spider-Verse movies. In the second one, at least, they do a pretty good job of touching on that topic and kind of filling Miles in like, hey, this is something that happens in every universe, and there are certain staples within the timelines that have to happen. And so, you've got all sorts of different Spider-Men. You have, Miles Morales, you have Peter Parker. Peter Parker comes in a lot of different forms. You have the Ultimate version, which winds up dying. You have Amazing Spider-Man, Sensational Spider-Man, Superior Spider-Man, Doc Ock. we're going to comic book series, like that is probably my favorite read out of any Spider-Man comic book
Superior
series.
Spider-Man is your favorite?
Yeah. I mean, you're exploring Doc Ock's mind in Peter Parker's body and what he would do if he was Peter Parker.
That was disgusting.
I know you hated it. I know, but
That was
I
it was disgusting specifically for the remembering his aunt doing the nasty with Otto Octavius. That was horrible. No.
okay. You didn't have to bring that up, but okay. Yes. All right. Uncle Otto, is that you?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. All right. Yeah.
I was saying, and he remembered all of it.
He's one of the best villains of all time. Can we agree on that?
I'm not a fan of I'm not a fan of Otto Octavius. I'm not a fan of Dr. Octopus, actually. I like Venom.
As a villain?
Huh?
As a villain? You don't like him as a villain?
Some in the 90s, like some of his stuff, but no, actually. I think Sandman is more interesting. Venom, Carnage, Doppelganger, Demo
I
Goblin.
love Carnage. I'm not a huge fan of Sandman or Doppelganger. Vulture, I think, is very overlooked, and he should be given more of a spotlight. And in Noir, Spider-Man Noir, I don't know if you know much about Vulture in there, but he is a straight up cannibal, and he's scary. And so it's a very interesting take on him. And
yeah,
I mean, if you're given the opportunity to go like sinister with somebody like Vulture, oh gosh, like it gets crazy. Who else is there? Scorpion.
Out of villains, just villains.
Kraven
the Hunter, Chameleon,
Morbius,
Hydra Man. You have what's his name? Is it Silverfang? What's his name? The old guy who has like the electronic power suit. You have the Rose, Kingpin.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, the Rose, Kingpin. I really like Kingpin, and and the Rose. You had Prowler. You had Rocket Racer. You had Black Cat. You know, and you had a bunch of them.
Goblin.
Marco. Who?
The Goblins.
You had the Goblins. You had White Rabbit. You had the Walrus. you had Vermin. You had that one. You had that one like Goblin guy. You had the Jackal. You had the Tarantula, and you had that one Goblin guy who I think might. Yeah, and then you had Vermin. You had the one dude who cloned Peter Parker, who you find out is the Jackal. Or at least one of his clones was the Jackal, and he, hit him. Green, you already did Green Goblin, I think. A bunch of them. Screech, I forget her name. The one with the black outfit with like the white, like line, like lightning.
Doesn't she wind up getting a symbiote eventually?
I think she does, but she usually likes to be around Carnage. That's her deal.
Yeah,
like Shriek or something.
Shriek. Yep. Carnage.
Stiltman, the Trapster, Paste Pot Pete.
Oh gosh, now you're going to some guys that I don't even know a whole lot about their story.
The Trapster has glue powers, and he gets.
Do remember Trapster. Paste Pot Pete, I don't know anything about.
It's the Paste Pot Pete is the Trapster. He changed his name from Paste Pot Pete to the Trapster because everybody was making fun of him.
Okay.
Especially Spider-Man.
I think
Base Pop Pete, he's coming for me. Yeah.
that's so horrible. Like, oh no, like let's watch out for this guy. And then he's like, "Oh, I'm the trapster, and I'm gonna kill you." And then he's like, "Oh, I should probably take this guy a little bit more
Right,
seriously."
yeah. He'll do something that's more dangerous. He almost dies. But
That's kind of how I
still.
feel like what they did with what's the guy's name? Polka Dot in the Spider-Verse
The Spot.
movies. The
The
Spot.
Spot.
Yeah. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, he's awesome
But
in the he's awesome in the
yeah, in the
cartoon.
Spider-Verse movie. Sorry, we had a little bit of delay. I'm talking over you. Go ahead.
Well, in the cartoon, in the show, the Spider-Man the animated series, the Spot was cool, but I found out he was less awesome in the comics, and then they made him cool again in the comics later on, but they had to rejigger things. But
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how it went. And so we're getting, I think, probably the best version of Spot in the Spider-Verse movies right now. I like what they're doing with him. They're exploring his powers and the whole dimensional thing. I think it's kind of cool. You know, they're a little bit of an upgrade in my opinion, but it's not so like crazy to think like, okay, yeah, his powers could eventually do these kinds of things. So I think it's cool. Carnage, I think, as far as like the movies go, very, very poorly done. He is like supposed to be one of the most sinister villains out there. He
Electro.
is like, what's that?
Electro.
Oh, Electro. Yeah, forgot about him. You and I know, have two different takes on the movie version of him. That's fine. I think going back to Carnage real quick, Carnage was very poorly done in the movies. He was kind of a joke. Should have never been a joke. He is like a sinister villain that is a murderer, and he will flat out kill you.
Serial killer.
Venom. Yeah. Venom is like rainbows and butterflies compared to Carnage, in my opinion. Not that Venom isn't a bad guy, like, right, or can be a very bad guy, but Carnage is like, okay, we really got to watch out for this guy, and like there is like doom and disaster written all over that if he shows up.
To put a point to that, or get the point to that, Carnage, Venom and Spider-Man have teamed up to fight Carnage, even though Venom literally wanted to kill Spider-Man at the time. He's like, I'm going to kill you after, but we have to team up to fight Carnage because he's just crazy.
Yep.
Carnage is nuts.
Like, I'm not crazy. That guy's crazy. Let's go take him on.
Yeah.
I think, you know, that should paint a good picture for just about anybody that's a fan of Spider-Man. Electro. I know that you really disliked the movie version of him. We talked about this before.
I think Jamie Foxx's portrayal was very good. I thought that was a great character. It was not Electro from the comics. It was not Electro. They created a good character. He had cool powers and everything, cool backstory and all that, but it wasn't the Electro. It wasn't Electro. But
Electro
he did a really good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like watching something that...
If he was named something different, would you have appreciated the character?
Well, yeah. Well, I think he did a great job. I think it was I think he did a great portrayal, and it was interesting to the story and everything. It's just, it was off. Yeah. I think they did it for certain reasons. Yeah. I think it was good in the movie.
So, we're here to talk about Spider-Man Noir today. We've watched Spider-Verse. He's probably one of the like most loved characters in the Spider-Verse movies. I believe Nicolas Cage voices him, but I don't think a lot of people know the comic book history of who he is. And they probably don't understand like what they're going to get into if they see a live action version of him. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on him before I jump in?
Sure. On Spider-Man Noir, voiced by Nicolas Cage. Yeah, I could do that. He he's from an alternate dimension. He's from an alternate universe, um, and it's he's from like the 30s. So it's set in the 30s in an Elseworlds kind of 30s where you have superheroes and stuff. Um, he he's Peter Parker originally in the comics, and and what happens is he ends up breaking accidentally this totem or idol, and a spider god. A bunch of spiders swarm out, and I think some webbing as well, some black webbing, but at least a bunch of spiders swarm out. And the spider deity, the spider god, bestows on him all the powers of Spider-Man minus the including web creation, web development, or whatever. And so he does that. And we're just talking. I believe the god's name is Erishkigal, but yeah, it gives him those powers. He doesn't need web shooters, so he's not technologically advanced. And he first starts out using primarily a gun, so he uses guns to shooty people to make them go away. And it shows up
right here.
Yes, and in the
go ahead and flip over so people have an idea of who this Arish Kagal guy is.
So Arish Kagal gives him these powers, and this was in the 2009 series and part of the Noir series by Marvel, and then it went into. That's a great story. That's great character design, and then the next instance was from Shattered Dimensions, a game series where you could play as multiple different Spider-Man, and you might have different. I think you might have different power sets. I think you do have different power sets or abilities in that game for the different ones, which is great. I loved it from the look of it. And then Edge of Spider-Verse was when they reintroduced him when they were doing the Into the Spider-Verse or when they were introducing the multiple dimensions of Spider-Man, the multiple Spider-Man from across the dimensions. And then, and that's kind of where people were introduced to him. And then they have the movie. The movie came out, and he also wears like aviator goggles that he took from, I think, his uncle. I forget. I think it was his uncle that went into the war, but he used his like fighter pilot outfit as his own outfit to build his super suit from, and he also wears a Kevlar vest. But that's the kind of intros they did retroactively after the movie give Spider-Man the ability to shoot web lines instead of web nets, which is what he originally started out in the 2009 series. But yeah, I think
he didn't have like a straight line like you see in like the normal Spider-Man movies. It was like kind of like a black silky spray that kind of just went everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's what the comic portrayed. And then you watch him in the Spider-Verse movies. I will say the Spider-Man Noir that we get in the Spider-Verse movies is quite a bit older than the one that we got in the comic books. So maybe it's just refined like ability. I don't know. It's kind of not explained, but you get two different things with two different characters. I do feel like the Noir in the Spider-Verse was kind of more of a comedic relief. Like you kind of see him in passing and he gives like these deep like thoughts for like a moment that isn't really that deep. And so it's like, oh, there's kind of an irony here. And that's, his thing. I think it's kind of like their trope on like the times of the Depression and, people who lived, kind of through that.
Right.
Which I think is a little sad, they're kind of mocking it, but at the same time, like comic book Noir, he is very clearly a socialist. His aunt is like standing on a street corner, like preaching to people about how bad capitalism is because of all the corruption that's going on around them with the Goblin and Craven and Vulture and all those guys.
Those heads of industry, those evil
What's that?
moguls. Those heads of industry, those evil moguls.
Yeah, exactly. And all these guys are supposed to be like gangsters, essentially. Vulture is like terrifying. He is a straight up cannibal. And you learn that like Peter Parker's Uncle Ben died before he acquired powers. And Vulture, like, after Uncle Ben died, Vulture went and just like ate him in front of like a journalist and the rest of like the big bad gang, and like tore him to bits. And everybody thought that it was a pack of like wild rabid dogs, but no, it was Vulture who did it, which is like stomach turning.
It's funny.
Kind of give you like how sinister the villains are in Noir.
I find it ironic that Spider-Man Noir is a socialist, and he's with the socialist aunt when he fought in World War II against the socialists, against the National Socialist Party of Germany. Not ease. Yeah, so that's what. And they are socialists. It's the National Socialist Party. So
yeah.
Well, you're not.
Yeah, kind of an irony there in that, but they're all for like, hey, we want, fair wages in the workplace, and we don't want to live, in the slums of this depression kind of thing. That's really like their basis for that argument. Now, we know based on history, like, hey, here's what socialism, communism kind of looks like. This is probably not the greatest idea, but I mean, people are going to have difference of opinions. My opinion is capitalism's great.
It is great. I wouldn't be here, and you wouldn't be there if it weren't for capitalism and right? God and everything else. But nobody likes to work for free is one thing. I mean, if someone says work for the other people, I don't want to work for whoever you are. I want to work for me. I want to work for my interests first. And I don't count on you to be able to work your hardest, work your butt off, and kill yourself for me. I don't see that happening. I don't expect it to happen. So, yeah,
that's a fair take, in my opinion. All that being said, to continue on the storyline of the comic book, Peter Parker meets up with this journalist. His name is Ben Ulrich. Ben Ulrich kind of narrates the comic for like the first half of it. Takes Peter Parker under his wing as like a mentor. You learn that like Ben's not as good of a guy as like you think he was, because he's narrating this comic. He was actually there when Peter Parker's Uncle Ben died and witnessed what happened with the Vulture. Anyways, Peter Parker, bitten by one of the spiders, gains these powers, and they're like, yeah, if you were evil, this would have killed you, but you're not evil, so you get these powers. Congratulations. That was kind of the basis of that story. And so he shows up, he jumps through a window as Goblin or Norman Osborn is talking to Ben Ulrich, and hears everything that Ben Ulrich's been doing. He's been like basically blackmailing Norman Osborn into paying him money so his crimes don't get out, because he's got all the evidence against him. Once Spider-Man shows up, though, it's kind of like game over for Ben, and Norman Osborn's like, we need to put this guy down, put him in the grave. And Peter Parker witnesses Ben being killed. I want to say Jameson was killed as well, if I remember correctly. As they hired Peter Parker, and Norman went after the Daily Bugle to kill it at its source. So they killed Jameson and they killed Ben. Parker witnessed Ben dying, shows up, talks to Black Cat, gets all the evidence, because you find out that Ben and Felicity were in a relationship, but Felicity left Ben for Norman for whatever reason. It's kind of insinuated that Norman made her, or was doing like some kind of extortion to make her like be with him in a relationship. Yeah. And you don't really get a lot of that, but she does hand Peter Parker a picture of her and Ben, you know, as he's given the evidence, and she says, here you go, like I want you to have this. And then that's the end of that graphic novel. And that's of course after he takes out Norman Osborn. And yeah. Another thing about Noir, he's no stranger to like using weapons. He's okay with pulling out a gun and doing
stopping the threat.
Yeah.
Making the bad guy stop is what he's good at. Resolving situations.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is actually,
so
I think, a point in his favor.
I think so too. You don't have a lot of like hero figures that are willing to take that step and go that far. It's very interesting that him with his background, you know, his Aunt May and Uncle Ben believing what they believe, that he's willing to go as far as he does. But he does. And so like you witness kind of a different side of a Spider-Man here who's willing to like, hey, we're going to put down this threat and take care of it. And that's it.
Better than Batman letting millions of people die over and over again.
Yeah, like you have somebody who's willing to like keep blowing up cities and will go as far as like placing nuclear bombs and stuff, and Batman refuses to take him out. Whereas Noir, Spider-Man Noir, he's hey, there's no nonsense here. Goodbye.
Right. Yeah. I really appreciate that. I'm not so surprised about the lengths he's willing to go to, because I know other people with their same beliefs, and they've gone to the same. They've participated in those kinds of things before, so you know.
Yeah. With all that being said, I do find it interesting that they're going to do a live action series on this. Amazon's picked up the ticket here, and they're supposedly filming it. And rumors are Nicolas Cage is going to be starring as Noir. So they're going to do an older take on Spider-Man Noir. So this is after like the kind of young kid that you see in the comic book. And I don't know what they're going to do with that story. So I'm interested to see like how dark and grimy they're going to make it, because Spider-Man Noir very much kind of had that feel of like, hey, he's like really kind of down in the dirt,
gritty,
getting the things done. You know, it's gritty. Definitely that kind of feel in the comic book. I do feel like it was more comedy in like the cartoon movies, and maybe like it's because it's a kid's movie that's the direction they're going with it. They're doing a live action, so I don't know. What's your feeling about Amazon taking that up?
Well, one, I think Sony might be, I heard there might be debates or like some lawsuit going on or something around the rights of the Spider-Man character between Disney and Sony. And so I think they probably want to put something out there pretty quick. And with the lackluster reception of Madam Web and and the Silk Project, them abandoning the Silk Project, I think they want to go for a popular character. What?
I didn't know they abandoned that.
Yeah. Apparently it's scrapped, and I guess they had done a couple episodes, or they were working on a couple episodes, as far as I know. And
interesting.
Yeah, and so I think they'd be going for, and the decline in superhero movies in general and superhero content, I think they might be trying to go for something that they know is a fan favorite, being Spider-Man Noir, and one that has more freedom in it, being that it's Spider-Man Noir. So people don't know about Spider-Man. I mean, they loosely know things about Spider-Man proper, about Peter Parker from Earth 616, the normal dimensions. But I think they're probably going to go for that. And maybe they could save some money on Nicolas Cage, who's talked about retiring, and he's had some issues financially, so they might be going, we can get someone who's loved and beloved and who's entertaining. We know that he can draw a crowd, and it's a character that lots of people like, and we can get it on the cheap. I think that's part of the reasoning that they chose him. Yeah.
How do you feel about him doing that and reprising the role as Ghost Rider?
I think it's fantastic. I've seen Nicolas Cage in Ghost Rider. I've seen what he looks like when he works out. He is rock hard, tons of muscles, bulged out all over the place, and he's just jacked. He's a jacked dude when he wants to get jacked, when he wants to get in shape. And I think even if they choose him for a live action and they cover him up with like some gear, like the trench coat and all that other stuff, I think it could be played well. And in addition, or they might hire body double, but if they choose to have him go in just live action, I think he could get cleaned up and get himself in superhero shape for the film. And I wouldn't be surprised.
I think he is getting cleaned up and getting into superhero shape from what I've seen.
Yeah.
They're going to start doing not Civil War stuff. Oh gosh, Secret Wars.
Oh, okay. Secret Wars.
I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
I didn't know. I didn't hear about that. So
yeah,
that'll probably be terrible, like their other movies that they've been.
I hope not. It is kind of unfortunate that we're watching, the big bad guy kind of lose the steam as the big bad guy because of involvement
Disney?
in other things outside of.
Oh, another bad guy. Sorry, I thought you were talking about Disney for a second.
No. I wasn't going to go that far. Still want to, try and get some views on this video, but no. What was the bad guy's name? Loki, Ant-Man, Kang. There you go. Yeah,
Kang the Conqueror?
I don't know why I can't remember his name, but the actor who played Kang, I guess he might be serving some time. He's got some legal stuff going on, and I don't think he's Kang anymore. So either they've got to hire somebody else to fulfill that role if they're going to continue with him, or they're going to have to introduce another big bad. They're talking about maybe bringing Dr. Doom on the scene now that Fantastic Four is kind of floating around in there. They're kind of also dropping hints towards X-Men and, crossovers there. Marvel wants to keep pushing the movies, and introducing things. I'm all for it, but they've got to do it right. I just think stick to comic book material and stop trying to change up so much to fit the narratives of the media nowadays. That's my personal take and opinion on it. Yeah, Dr. Doom I think would be a great villain if they do go that route.
And Secret Wars would enable them.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And Secret Wars, I don't know if it's the first one, but I think the second Secret Wars would enable them, I believe, to pull in different dimensions of characters and have them join up together and then create a new universe with all these ones. So they would be able to do a reboot of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They'd be able to do that and bring back the old favorites that they got rid of because they wanted to increase visibility and equity. So they did that, and then people stopped watching. So they're bringing back characters. People.
Yeah, they got to figure out how to make money now because they're bleeding.
Yes,
that's kind of how that works. If you have a service that you're offering to people and they don't want to buy it, you don't make any money. So, capitalism.
Yay! The buyers, you vote with your dollar. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, we've kind of given a rundown of different villain characters. We've talked about Spider-Man Noir, live action show coming out here. I'm looking forward to the live action dropping, but we do have a number of other Spider-Man characters out there in like this whole Spider-Verse thing, I guess, who would you like to see, and who is your favorite Spider-Man character?
But I would like. Can I add one point before I get to who I would like to see and who my favorite Spider-Man character is? Can I?
Sure, yeah.
All right. The other thing about Spider-Man Noir is it would probably be cheaper to produce because he's low-level crime and he's, doing the street, and he's not wearing like a skin-tight outfit and everything. He's wearing a trench coat, easy to, get, and the mask, it's more heavy duty, and you have you might have black webs, but principally he's using his fists and he's using guns, so that I don't think that would be too expensive. So again, that would be good for Amazon to take on because they'd be saving money, low risk that way. Favorite Spider-Man character? Are we talking about the Spider People?
Sure.
Okay, well,
if we're going like Spider-Verse and we're talking like all the different like Spider-Man dimensions and whatnot, and like I know you've read quite a few comic books with all sorts of different characters. I'm curious to know like which guy would be like the one that you would probably gravitate to the most.
I at least like the outfit of Miguel O'Hara. So Spider-Man 2099. I thought he looked
I've
really
always liked his outfit too.
What?
I've always liked his outfit too. I thought he was super like intriguing when I saw the comic book for the first time. Like, you have this Spider-Man that's from the future and you're just kind of like, who is this guy? Like, okay.
Yeah, him, or maybe just I like Scarlet Spider. He's not technically, he's a clone. I think I'm thinking of Ben Reilly, not Kane. So Kane came after and took up the mantle of Scarlet Spider. He's like much.
Let's elaborate that a little bit more, because there's a lot of people that I know won't know this storyline of Spider-Man.
Okay, so it comes from the Clone Saga. So who we mentioned before, the Jackal, he created clones. He created a couple clones that we know of Peter Parker, and he created clones of himself, and I think one of Gwen Stacy, who Peter fell in love with, and then he found out, oh, she's a clone. And then she died, and so sad again. Peter Parker, Peter Parker. So in the story, there are two Peter Parkers. There we go. And each one thinks they're the real Peter Parker. The actual Peter Parker. Well, I'm just speaking about Ben Reilly and him first. Both of them think that they are the original, and the actual Peter Parker freaks out, and he looks like monstrous because he's like, "You're stealing my life. You're trying to take my loved ones in my life." And he's like, "Ah!" And he looks nuts, and he's gonna attack. Anyways, they say that there's a test or whatever. They find out that Peter Parker, the actual one, is the fake, is the clone. So he moves off, I think, to Oregon, or he moves away, and he starts his own life, and he takes up the name of Scarlet Spider, and then the clone Peter Parker operates as Peter Parker, living his life normally in the regular Peter Parker outfit, I think, or maybe he augments it a little bit. I think he might have augmented. He augments it with the cool black fingers gloves. Anyways, and the web shooter cartridges on the outside of his wrist. It's a great outfit. Anyways, so they're both operating, and so that was Ben Reilly, who had the finger gloves and the cool suit, the black and red and blue suit, and so I really liked him and the outfit that's Peter Parker wore, Scarlet Spider, and then there's also the third clone, which was Kane, who was an imperfect clone of Peter Parker. So Peter Parker has spider sense, which alerts him to danger. It could be any kind of danger. Kane had this warped one where he actually saw like prophecies of what was going to happen to people farther out, and he would get their images in his head. Peter Parker had the ability to wall crawl and stick to surfaces. Kane couldn't do that, but what he could do was scar you horribly and painfully, like with acid on whatever part of you he wanted it to touch. So that was what he had, and he was also more physically. He was physically stronger, more durable, more imposing, and he was a grumpy guy because he knew he was a flawed cloner. He started out, and then he leaves, and there's also the other. There's things happen with the Spider God and who is chosen to be the Spider or whatever. Anansi, the one who's chosen to be the Spider Totem, or the person who's supposed to take on the Spider powers. Anyways, Kane actually takes that up because he's willing to kill. He's willing to go the distance to actually serve the Spider God or whatever. And anyways, he takes up the Scarlet Spider name afterwards. So he's kind of like a Punisher version of Spider-Man later. But I like the original Scarlet Spider with like the blue hood and the red mask without the lines and everything. I just think that's cool. Anyways, I think
so.
Scarlet Spider.
Basically, to explain to the audience here, the powers that Kane has are very similar to the powers you see Madame Web using in her film that just released. I watched it. I personally thought that it was an okay movie. A lot of people, for whatever reason, don't like it. I understand, like, it's all women, spider women, and for whatever reason, people find it off-putting for some reason. The storyline I think was good. Like, I think it was okay, and the villain was interesting as well. And it kind of gives you, I don't know, a little bit of a deeper insight if you're going like movie route into like the Spider-Verse and what happens with all that. So you're gonna say something?
I saw it as they're deliberately putting women together to be the woman team and everything, and I don't like that. I don't personally like that. I mean, if it's coincidental, that's fine with me, but I don't like a man's group. A whole bunch of men get together, they all have similar powers, and they team up. They're like, we're men and strong. Go out there and fight. And you can't call us weak because we're strong. Anyways, I actually love like all the Spider women characters, including Silk. I love all of them. They're fantastic. They're way underrated.
Was really hoping to see a live action Silk, but we're not going to get that.
No. But it's I thought they had different reasons than just telling the story. I thought if they wanted to tell the story, and it could have been that they felt that there was conflict between Marvel showing Spider-Man and them doing a separate Spider-Man related series, but without him, especially if they're so close, Madame Web and Spider-Man. But yeah,
I think if you're trying to create a Spider-Verse, like Madame Web is kind of at the center of that, and so you have to introduce her somehow, and she's going to have, you know, her little group. So I didn't feel like the movie was like off-putting or trying to like overshadow Peter Parker or Spider-Man or Miles Morales or anything like that. I just felt like it was another extension of the Spider-Man movies.
From what I heard, it was
my personal take.
Yeah, from what I heard, people said they enjoyed it, and the Sydney Sweeney, right? She said, and I think one of the other Spider women said, it's not actually about like what people would complain like feminist girl boss thing. It was actually just a story, and people said that they enjoyed it. So I think that's actually, if it wasn't, I think that's unfortunate. And I totally blame the movie industry for doing that, because they're the ones who did all the pushing for these things and the messaging, instead of telling actual story and just being interested, wanting to tell a Spider-Man, Spider-Woman story. they went for this stuff. And so when people see it, they make assumptions. And so that's unfortunately.
I think that the advertising was misleading, and that's probably what off-put a lot of people. The advertising itself made it appear like, hey, there's this group of spider women that are going to be fighting against people and whatnot. And actually, like, the spider women in that don't get any powers until like the very end of the movie, and you don't hardly see them. The story is actually about Madam Web protecting all of them before they come into their roles as spider people, and like her origin story. And so I feel like you're absolutely correct in that it was a story, and it was overlooked because of the trailers and how it was being portrayed to the public. And so I don't feel like it was given a fair shake as far as like, hey, let's watch this story and see what happens. That's just my personal opinion on it. I didn't dislike the movie. I didn't find anything like that I was like, oh, I absolutely hate this. Like, no, I thought for the most part it was a pretty decent story, and it was okay.
To me, one of the bigger things was Madam Web is elderly. The first Madam Web is an elderly woman. Okay, she starts out not being that elderly, but then one of the Spider Women actually gets her powers. So Madam Web passes on, but I think it's Jessica. I forget her name. She takes over the name and role of Madam Web, and she was already a Spider Woman who was out there fighting and all these kinds of things, beating people up, beating guys up, and then she took over. So she was kind of a mix. But I wanted to see the old lady version of Madam Web. And I know that's not really, that might not make, if you're a good storyteller, you can make it a good movie, or a good show, or whatever, a good movie.
Yeah, I think that they're trying to appeal to a younger audience, though, and keep them invested in comic book movies.
An old lady. Okay. Anyways, I would be happy. It looked like they had things in there to me that said that there was going to be like there was going to be socially progressive concepts within the movie, and it's around the time where they were doing a bunch of this stuff in Marvel, and I think that's why even movies that weren't like that or weren't predominantly that in Marvel and stuff, I think the audience has just realized where things were going, and they're just like, even if it wasn't, they're just bowing out. They're just like, I see that. I'm expecting the same stuff or more than that you've been shoving down our throats for the last 5 years or whatever. And so, no thanks. I'm just not going to support it. And so, yeah,
that's kind of sad.
It's sad for the companies. You had your chance. It's not like nobody was telling you just write a comic book, just do the thing. It's right there. You don't have to do much. Like, it shows
you've already got the script, right? Like, you've already got the outline. Like, it's already there for you.
It's
and
pretty much storyboarded for you already. Yep. You got all the backgrounds, you got all the origins. It's not like it's not very difficult. So, I mean, putting a movie together is difficult. Putting a show together is difficult, but it's not.
So,
I mean,
going back to the question that led us here, your favorite Spider-Man character, Ben O'Reilly, Scarlet Spider?
Yeah.
Okay. How'd you feel about him in the Into the Spider-Verse movie?
I don't remember him in the Into the Spider-Verse movie.
Did you watch the second one?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know that thing I mentioned about the audience not leaving, and then they see it and they go, okay, no. Yeah, I'm one of that audience. I'm one of those people from the audience.
You should watch the second one. There is going to be a third one. I'm watching it. I don't agree with some things in it, but I mean, it's interesting that they are. All right, spoilers. If you haven't seen the second one, you end the movie and Miles Morales thinks that he's gone back home after fighting Miguel O'Hara, and then winds up in an alternate universe that the spider was supposed to have been in, the spider that bit him. And he finds a version of himself that became the Prowler, because his dad died instead of his uncle in that one. And so his uncle took up raising him. And so you're looking at Spider-Man Miles Morales and Prowler Miles Morales kind of staring each other down, figuring out what in the world's going to happen, on top of like having Spot, you know, in the background still messing with things. So like, you don't know if these two Miles Moraleses are going to wind up going head to head, or if they're going to wind up working with each other. You can definitely tell Miles Morales, the Prowler Miles Morales, is a bit grittier and maybe not as good, but we don't know. And so that's a question to be answered in the third movie. So I'm looking forward to it. And then looking forward to see like what happens with Spot and how it all wraps up. So me, as far as my personal favorite Spider-Man character throughout the Spider-Man movies, I don't know if you'll like this. I like Gwen Stacy Spider-Man.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting take because, like you said earlier, like pretty much every Gwen Stacy dies. And so like the one time Gwen Stacy doesn't die, Peter Parker has to die. And so she winds up fulfilling the role of Spider-Man.
Oh, I think it's great. I got the first issue. I love the character.
I think that she's got a very compelling story, and like you're kind of like seeing her do these different things in the movies. I have the first issue of the comic book as well.
Yeah. Mine is signed.
I like it. I think it's cool. Her or Silk, I think, could do their own great like standalone movie.
Silk, they put her into a box. They kind of just used her as like a joke, a recurring like punchline over and over again, because she came from like the 90s. They had like all 90s like content, and she was raised off that, and they wanted to say that's a joke. Everything you do is a joke, like the unsomethingable MIDI. I forget her name. Unconquerable. I forget her name. There was a show where a girl was from the 90s. Yeah. And she comes to modern America or modern times, and they're using her like
in a bunker or whatever, and then like winds up coming out of the bunker, and she's still living in the 90s.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of the things they said, I'm like, yes, you're actually speaking like a sane person. Yes, that makes sense. And no, we're actually doing it wrong now. So I disagree with that, and it kind of ruins the character because, like in the comics that I read, more recent ones that I read with Silk, she's just doing like a bunch of catchphrases from the 90s or whatever. And it's just like, okay, yeah, she's from the 90s, but people had real conversations back then. It wasn't all
like what catchphrases.
Like totally radical or something like that or whatever. Like there's the bee. It's something like yeah, and it's just like why you have a character, and this is really interesting. She lived her life in a bunker, and she wasn't able to see the world except for videos of like Spider-Man, like of modern Spider-Man or whatever, and then all the regular television and programming that like broadcast television that they had going on at that time. That's interesting. That's horrible and also entertaining and light and everything in there, and seeing someone, and you could have had like a really fully developed, interesting character, and they didn't. They just used her as a punchline. So, you know, yeah. I
get your frustration. With that being said, I do think like there is some depth to her character, and she would have done a great live action. Same thing with Gwen Stacy. I think Gwen Stacy as a live action would have been great. Who knows? Maybe we still get something like that in the future. They can do whatever they want with TV shows nowadays. I mean, let's take a look at Arrow and Flash and whatnot and what they did with that. I kind of I'm hoping Grant, the guy who played the Flash in the show, he gets to pick up the movie role, but we'll see what happens with that. There's talks.
I am noticing a lot of redheads get tans, deep tans. And and some braids a lot. That seems to be happening throughout.
I feel
movies and shows and stuff.
The guys who the characters who were, you know, redhead or blonde, white guy superhero characters are no longer that, and yeah, I get where you're going with that.
Weird. It's weird. They are. I just want to say they are just looking for the best actors and actresses. None of this is intentional. It just looks like, since all of them are changing, that it looks like there's like some kind of plan there. It isn't. Trust me, bro. It is all just because of their skills. What other reason could there be?
Because Grant was a very good actor, and I enjoyed him in that role. So, you know, at first, like, my biggest complaints were the suit. Like, when they first made him, he looked like a football. However, him like playing the role of Barry Allen as the Flash, I think he did a really good job. Better than what we had in the movies. I don't even want to mention the guy's name because he makes me mad. Yeah.
The mother choker.
So
the baby slammer, the baby body slammer.
The guy that I hope spends quite a few years in jail and we never get to see him on a screen again playing that role because he sucked.
Yo, he is a Flash in the pan. He's in and out. Like a Flash.
All right, I'm done.
It's not a surprise. You just had a really quick appearance. It's gone. Like the Flash.
Okay. Well, I think with that, we're going to go ahead and close this out. Cape is a lie, Cranberry Langers, and this time we didn't have Wilhelm Scream with us. Hopefully he'll be here next time. But we appreciate you guys listening. If you enjoyed our content, let us know what you'd like to hear. Also, I'm going to do a quick shout out real quick. I have a Twitch channel. My gamer tag is Tenacious Samurai. If you want to go ahead and give me a watch. I like playing games like Fortnite and Destiny. Most of the time I'm streaming Fortnite though. So yeah, I'll catch you guys later. This is Nerdified.
Bye.